who desire nothing but you, who focus on nothing but you, who spend ourselves nothing but you and whatever it is that you put in front of us to do. God, I pray that in areas where we have done things ourselves or for ourselves, God, we would lay those down before you. Jesus, we're here today to worship you. We're here today to spend time in your word, but mostly I pray that we're here today to know you, to draw close to you. Lit up and it's beautiful, and you go into the house and there's people distributing coffee and cookies and cider. That'll be us at the late shift on Friday. And there's people at the front desk greeting you and being nice, and you sign in. That will be us Friday at the late shift. Also, there's sometimes people at the front area greeting people and saying goodbye to people as they come and go. That'll be us. So if you want to help with that, there's a sign-up sheet on the back. If you're signed up for that, try to carpool if you can. But if you can't, that's okay too. If you're going out to Shore Acres and the main entrance to Shore Acres turns this way, don't turn there. Right past that is another little road, and you'll have to go slow to kind of find it because it's dark back there. That's where we park to be the hosts. So park back there. You go into this like gate that goes right behind the house, the garden house, and then come in and you'll have a job to do. Listen, most of you won't have a job to do. Just telling you that because there's a lot of people signed up. There's very few jobs, like 3. Anyways, so most of you will just be walking around being nice to people, helping people out if they need to know where the bathrooms are or things like that. If you can't be nice to people, then maybe take your name off the list. I don't know. Learn how, something, okay? It's going to be a great time. If anybody has any questions, let me know. Also, one of the things that we used to do at Life Change Church back in the 20-teens, I don't know what to say then. Before COVID, how's that? Before 2020, we had cleaning teams that would come in once a week, and the team would come in and just clean up the church. And the teams we had enough teams, so you only had to do it once a month. We're going to be starting up this ministry serving opportunity. It's a super cool way to serve in a very non-confrontational way at church. You come in, you're on a team, you help clean once a month. So if you're interested in that, talk to myself and talk to my wife next time you see her. And those are going to be starting hopefully in January. So if anybody's interested in that, please let me know. Tithe and offering boxes on the back table. Also, there's new visitor cards. If you're a new visitor, I would invite you to fill out a new visitor card. If you give that to me today, free Life Change Church coffee mug for you as our gift. Okay, we've been in this series for a while titled Questions Jesus Asked. And often we think Jesus is the one with all the answers, which he is because he's God, so he has all the answers. But in the Gospels, where Jesus' life is laid out before us, more than any other person in the Bible, he asks questions. In those Gospels, those 4 different accounts of his life, there's over 300 documented questions that Jesus asked. He asked more questions than he answered. And why did he do that? Sometimes to teach us something, sometimes to help us discover the truth in a different way, sometimes to promote a shift in the way people think, sometimes to show us what the kingdom of God is like. But every time Jesus asks a question, his desire is to engage people into real relationship. And he's asking questions as a way to interact with them. He wants to hear what people have to say. Just like when we are actually talking to somebody and you start asking questions back and forth, you should be desiring to hear what they have to say. It's to get to know each other. It's to build that relationship. That's what Jesus does. So we've been looking at these questions. I'm going to give you a brief rundown of the last 7 weeks. We started in Mark 10. We looked at the question, what do you want me to do for you? Then we were in John 5, and we looked at the question, do you want to get well? Then we were in Matthew 6, and the question was, why do you worry? Matthew 7, Jesus asked the question, what about the plank in your own eye? Going back and teaching us about not judging other people. In John 8, Jesus asked the question, has no one condemned you? And then in Mark 5, he asked the question, who touched my clothes? Last week, in Mark chapter 4, he asked this question, why are you so afraid? So we're finishing up, like I said, today. Today, to me, it's the most important question. It's literally, in my opinion, the most important question. And the question he asked today is out of Mark chapter 8. So you turn your Bibles there. And the question is simply this. This is the question Jesus asks. who do you say I am? All right? Here's the thing. The answer to this question is not about what you say with your mouth so much. It's what you say with your heart, what you say with your life, and what you say with your mouth. It is easy to say the words, Jesus is Lord. It is way harder to live like he is actually Lord of our life. It's a whole different ballgame. So when we ask this question, we really have to look at it. And listen, be honest with yourself right in this moment. It's not, about what you hope the answer is someday, and it's not about what you said the answer was when you're in Sunday school, and it's not about what your parents or your spouse or your friends or even what I say the answer is. It is 100% about who you say he is right now based on the words you say, based on what's going on in here, and based on how you live your life. That's the answer to the question. That's how you know who you say he is. So we're going through Mark 8, part of it. We're going to look at some ways we can better kind of evaluate that. And just, be honest with yourself when you come up with this question. Because if it's not where it needs to be, then we can change that. And if it is, then it can be an even greater measure. All right, Mark chapter 8, starting in verse 27. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" "You," he asked, "who do you say I am?" Peter answered, "You're the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But Jesus turned and looked at his disciples. He rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." All right. We're going to jump right into this. Number one, if you're taking notes, you can write down the word stop. Anytime I saw a thing that said, anytime somebody says stop, I don't know if they want me to collaborate and listen, or if it's hammer time, or in the name of love. I don't know. So that's not what we're talking about today. Verses 31 through 33 talk about this interaction with Peter, where he says, I'm getting ready to go to suffer. Jesus says, I got some stuff that I got to do. I'm going to suffer, I'm going to die, I'm going to be raised 3 days. He starts giving the disciples his story. And in Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 and 22, it's an account of the same thing. This is what it says. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and on the 3rd day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Here's what we need to stop. We need to stop trying to dictate Jesus, okay? We got to stop it. And I'm not saying like all of us are in here and we try to tell Jesus what to do like Peter did, because we know better, because we see Peter and we're like, "Oh, you moron, you should have never done that." What I'm saying, though, is that we repeatedly tell Jesus what we're not going to do by not doing it. You guys get that? We tell Jesus what we're not going to do simply by not doing it. Now, you might be thinking you don't do that, but you do it. We all do it. Jesus tells us something, and I'm not even talking like, during a prayer time, thus saith the Lord stuff coming down. I'm talking about in his word, he tells us to do things. We'll just talk about the Gospels. We'll just talk about the 4 accounts of his life, right? The words in red, he tells us to do things. We don't do them. If it's something we don't like, we don't do it. That's dictating Jesus. That's basically saying, "Never, Lord. I'm never going to do that." All you have to do, we can just break it down. We can just look at the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 through 7, the things that Jesus says there. Do you know how many things that Jesus says in there that you blatantly disagree with? And if you're like, "I don't know," then read through it and see how many things you don't do, because those are the things you blatantly disagree with. That basically Jesus says this is what needs to be done, And you literally, by not doing it, are saying, never, Lord, I'm never going to do that. And, you know, you can disagree with me if you want, and then we can go through them after service and we'll see. There's a guy, Russell Moore. He said Christianity is in crisis, and when they asked him why, this is what he said. It was the result of having multiple pastors tell me essentially the same story about quoting the Sermon on the Mount. Specifically, turn the other cheek. Okay? So Jesus tells us to turn the other cheek. If somebody slaps us, turn the other cheek. And to have someone come up after and say, where did you get all those liberal talking points? And what's alarming to me is that in most of these scenarios, when the pastor would say, I am literally quoting Jesus Christ, the response would be, not be, I apologize, the response would be, yeah, but that doesn't work anymore, that's weak. And when we get to the point where the teachings of Jesus himself are seen as subversive to us, we're in a crisis. That's the thing. Some of us are in that crisis right now. You might say Jesus is Lord out of your mouth, but your life doesn't say that at all. Not even a little bit. There's a song by DC Talk. It's called What If I Stumble? And there's an intro where this guy, Brennan Manning's talking. And this is what he says. The greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips and walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. The point of this is we have to stop telling God no. We have to stop it. Maybe by our words, but definitely by our actions. And really start to evaluate where you do this, where you tell God no. I mean, just look at the Sermon on the Mount, some of the topics. It says, if you hate your brother or sister, basically like you committed murder. So if there's any hatred, boom. How about this? If you look lustfully after someone, it's basically like committing adultery. So any lust in there, not doing what Jesus said. Talks about breaking our oaths, not doing what we say we're going to do. Talks about turning the other cheek, like I said. It tells us to love our enemies, right? We talked about that a few weeks ago.